Getting into pharmacy informatics. What to know? I am Barry McLean, and I will be posting this video on pharmacyinformatics.net. This presentation has specific details for pharmacy students and current pharmacists that have an interest in pharmacy informatics, but it's also suitable for all audiences because there are a lot of different specialists or people with different backgrounds that work on these teams, from computer science, pharmacy technicians, educators, nurses, you pretty much name it. There's a lot of people get into this. So welcome, and I hope that this is a career that you'll be interested in. A little bit about myself. I have over a decade of leadership in pharmacy informatics, specifically in a large health system space. I've been part of a lot of mass electronic health record conversions, 27 inpatient hospitals. I also have oversight over retail information systems and have been integrated over 70 stores within electronic health records. I'm also a residency program director for pharmacy informatics. I've done that for over 8 years. So just overall have a lot of experience with developing and educating and hiring folks in this particular space. So I'm really injecting that wisdom from past experience into this presentation. So what is pharmacy informatics? So I'm just going to level set with some basic definitions. So per AMIA, the American Medical Informatics Association, informatics is the science of how to use data, information, and knowledge to improve human health and delivery of health care services. So I listened to that definition and it's pretty abstract. Actually, it doesn't sound very exciting. So maybe through a more simple lens of mine, my definition for informatics is really a specialty that is involved with bringing innovation to life within healthcare and supporting and maintaining it so it's reliable and improving over time. So that's informatics as a whole. If you take a really small subset of that, a little pie of that, piece of pie of that, then you have pharmacy informatics. And really the focus of that is integrating the medication use process. That is really the focus. And I have a good slide that will go a little bit more into definition of what that medication use process is. But overall, with pharmacy informatics, some elements to this to be aware of is we work in medical and prescription records and databases. There's clinical decision support and warnings and alerts. We have drug information and references, interfacing, automation, robotics, data analytics and reporting, information sharing and transparency between providers and patients, finance and billing, printing, and overall just a focus on enhancing safety and workflows. So goals, pharmacy informatics is, we're using technology to, goal number one, provide world-class pharmacy services at any time, anywhere, to any person or living thing, because animals need medications too. And to optimize that medication use process, making it more efficient, safer, and cost-effective, while keeping it legal and compliant as well. So here's that slide I was talking about, the medication use process. And this is a very simple illustration to understand how it works. This can easily be a presentation on its own, but it all pretty much starts with the generation of a medication order or prescription from an electronic health record of some sort. So, that application would pull up a medication record and they get filled in with the right information and sent and prescribed for a particular patient and sent to a pharmacy where it would be verified and reviewed by a pharmacist and their staff. That medication would get dispensed, it might get filled by a machine, a robot, an automation dispensing cabinet, you know, label printing and printouts and things of that nature. If you're in a hospital setting, you have more documentation on the MAR, the medication administration record. Also, you might have barcoding and smart pumps involved with that. And then just overall within this life cycle of a medication order and how it starts from the beginning to end, there's really just a continuous oversight, monitoring of, you know, patient use and therapy and optimizing it for good outcomes. So I'll give you a brief history of pharmacy informatics, and really it just starts with paper. That's the way this began, and for a very long time. Really, in a nutshell, the history of pharmacy informatics, as pretty much all informatics, is interoperability, is really just the basic reality of it. So you started with paper, and then start introducing computers into the process, which in the very beginning of this was, let's just be honest, more fancy, you know, pieces of paper, really, more fancier version of it. But you start getting more data storage and smarter systems and reporting and those things as you start introducing this into computers and integrating it. But that story of interoperability grows with the internet and also the government helping fund meaningful use. Really steered, you know, the country and obviously now the world on the connection between machines. But now we can even see as smart devices, watches, and cell phones and things of that nature, the idea of interoperability is just becoming bigger and bigger. And there's more and more data, and there's more and more technology that's integrating services. And that's really, to be quite honest, is where we're at today. I'll give you a little dose of typical activities that people do in pharmacy informatics. It's working a lot in databases. As I mentioned, I've done a lot of mass conversions, so a lot of application deployments, redeployments. You might have new departments and new facilities that are coming up in live, and you have build related to those changes. You have medication records and order sets, protocols, order groups that you're building that are helping guide clinical judgment in a lot of ways. Having the right dose information on there, having the right, you know, pieces to help the providers do the right thing. You have alerts and warnings and other types of decision support that folks work on. We create a lot of reports and data analytics. We do interface activities that might include e-prescribing and printing and those dispensing systems I talk about. And like a lot of IT work, we have, you know, support. You know, you have ticketing systems, so you're reviewing tickets and doing troubleshooting and break fixes. You're doing training and education. You have maintenance where you do imports and upgrades and regular release notes, just keeping that system up to date. Requires a lot of work. So we talked a bit about what pharmacy informatics is. I have a slide here about what it also is not. So one of the things I put on here is, well, pharmacy informatics is not the whole IT department. A lot of IT departments can have huge numbers of individuals, and lots of different, you know, pieces of that as well. So keep that in mind that we really don't do everything. We're not expert on, you know, when your PC breaks, how to fix that or replace that. You know, it might not be really in our specialty. We have really narrow focus. And another thing very true for all of IT is we're not really a complaint line. I feel like sometimes in working, especially in very intense situations, you know, just having additional stress or anger, escalation is really never a helpful thing, especially when folks are putting all their energy into focusing on something. We really need a two-way street between a project team and the business to really facilitate a good outcome. So good points there. The big question. So the number one question I get from pharmacy students, interested professionals about getting into pharmacy informatics is, well, what can I be doing in the field? What can I be doing to get into it? What coding languages, experience and skills, opportunities, what should I be doing? And I pretty much answer that the same way every single time. And I just have a very pharmacist first mentality. And every day I come to work, I remind myself really why I do this and why it's important. It's really all about patient care. So really having that focus is, I consider, the most important aspect to start with. So what skills do you need? So this first question really depends on the type of setting you work in. If you're working in a R&D department of a software company, well, you probably should know a lot about computer programming, just to be quite honest. You won't last very long if you don't. But that really isn't as much true in a health system where you're working primarily with third-party applications and you're doing a lot of knowledge and training provided by the vendors. So they generally teach you what you need to know from that perspective. So my next question is, is pharmacy informatics an art or a science? And we can tell by some of the previous definitions that it really kind of alluded to a science, but I think the answer really is both. Because what a lot of programs and vendors and all that stuff doesn't really teach you is, well, good project management, good time management, leading change through a complex environment, leading an effective meeting even, good documentation, good technical documentation. That's what I would probably more define as the art of pharmacy informatics, and are very necessary skills to include in what you need to perform well in this. So who do I hire? So I do hire, and my priority is passionate and hardworking professionals in the end of the day. Just knowing all of those attributes, especially since I work in a health system environment, I feel like those are just the most key things for someone that's going to be successful for a long time and be a good investment. I will also say that just being analytical and technical itself is just attention to detail, and really relates to the thoroughness that's necessary in testing and quality assurance. So having good attention to detail, and actually, a lot of pharmacists actually tend to be pretty good analysts just on the basis of that. Kind of continue on the skills piece, so customer service and attitude. So I put a list of things on here: pharmacology, pharmacotherapy, surgical surgeries, sterile prep, VPN tunnels, Java, HL7 interfacing, all learnable, just all learnable. What's not always very natural with people is having good customer service, positive attitude, but very necessary skills, especially if you want to have a good quality experience in the field. Just my opinion, but definitely something I do also look for. So kind of going back to that original question, so what can I really be doing right now? So first things first, that practical experience. I especially tell pharmacy students this, that gosh, just really understanding the inner operations of a pharmacy, understanding clinical practice, understanding all the aspects of it, everything that you're doing, all these years of school, all very important. And the more realistic experience you have, the better. Just to be very honest, easily number one. Another thing I put on here is that this is project work and not shift work necessarily. And I feel like there's a big difference. So get your hands dirty doing projects, whether they're informatics or not. That's something that you want to kind of rule in or rule out early is, do you like that type of structural work? There's many days I have no idea what I'm going to get myself into the next day. Lots of variation. Things can just kind of throw you into a loop one way or the other. So you have to be very flexible. Always be looking for opportunities. So if you work in a healthcare environment and you're looking, you will find them. Just being a supervisor and a manager myself, whenever someone's raising their hand to do something, I usually don't say no. So I feel like you could definitely find your way into this, even if it's just a project here or there. Talk to folks in the field, shadow, network. At the end of this presentation, I'll have contact information, so feel free to reach out. It's a great way to get to know a little bit more about what a day-to-day activities really look like. And there's also a lot of different vendors out there. So Pharmacy Informatics is in a lot of places. It's not just in healthcare settings with pharmacies. So there are opportunities in recruiting that they do. And then I leave it at the end purposefully about the technical skills. Now, they're still important. And I do think that, if you're somebody that has a lot of those, that's a really good foundation. But I still put priority on everything I just said before. So technical skills, I put the first thing on here because I think it's the most accessible, is that just knowing your standard Microsoft applications. I know that sounds kind of corny, but Excel, Access, Visio, even PowerPoint and Word, there's a lot of advanced features and things that you can be doing with that. So, take advantage of those tools that you already have. That's kind of what we do in a lot of ways. And there are more enhanced apps that Microsoft has, and I'm not a Microsoft champion by any means, but there's probably other variations of these things. But in the end, some of the more advanced things I've seen are Power BI for data visualization, and SharePoint and Flow and Power Apps, just very usable things, practical things that we could be doing. Can solve a lot of problems. Getting a little bit more technical, so I put SQL for reporting. And there's also, based on SQL, there are a lot of powerful reporting platforms out there, Web Intelligence, Snowflake, there's a number of these. So I just feel like just even knowing how to query information and work yourself, through a database and tables and things of that nature, it's only going to benefit you. Just not going to hurt. Kind of, using that as kind of the foundation level. If you're more advanced, then I put HTML, CSS, and JS, jQuery. So I feel like these skills really kind of just help you get an appreciation for how a browser reads and formats web pages based on the files, and using JavaScript and jQuery, you can create little tools. You could be like your own little developer, creating calculators or forms and things of that nature. So kind of quick and dirty ways of seeing how things operate. Nice little tools that can be beneficial. And then lastly, I put programming languages on here. And generally, if you never programmed in your life, I would generally, advise trying Python, just because it's just more accessible, more usable than some of the other languages. I think the other ones really benefit if you go through like a college class or something of that nature to go through all the nuances. I kind of feel like Python is something that can be picked up a little bit easier for beginners, But again, it's really just getting you more appreciation on how do computers think? How do databases work? All those types of stuff. All beneficial. So what does especially need more than anything else? I kind of going with the whole theme of that practicality first. I just feel like professionals that with enough practical experience and technical skills that can work and translate the needs for successful projects. I think a good balance of those skills, highly, highly valued. Attitudes, can-do attitudes. And I put this, and I think it's so true. Even if you don't accomplish anything when working with your partners, good customer service just goes a long way. It is appreciated, and I think you're being looked at more as a value-added asset. And then I put here, we have a lot of shortages of different professions and, and jobs out there, but there's no bigger shortage than overall great leaders, and emphasizing the word great there. And I feel everyone, especially on this type of team, everyone is functionally a leader, informally or formally. That is what's really necessary to carry a project through. Why I believe in pharmacy residency training? Well, I will tell you just out of fact, at least from a pharmacist hiring standpoint, I would say the last easily 5 pharmacists I can think of I've hired all graduated at PGY2 Pharmacy Informatics residency, whether it was my own residency or some other one. So it just seems that is a very popular trend. And the reasons are pretty clear. It's a great bolus, kind of pun intended, of clinical and informatics experience. And especially if you get a program that can get you those 2 years at the same organization, you're just going to benefit even seeing more and more how things kind of come together. All incredibly valuable experience. So at the end of the day, it ends up being kind of a direct flight for a lot of people. And it's unfortunate because there's not a ton of these different programs out of the gate. So I feel like getting into one of these residencies is not necessarily an easy thing for sure. But if you get in there, this is your best way of getting a job in the field. It does not mean that if you don't get in residency at all that you can't get into pharmacy informatics. It's just more likely you're going to have a lot of different stops along the way and jobs and experiences, which I feel will only benefit you, just to be quite honest. And eventually you might find that opportunity come up. There's a lot of health systems out there that are hungry for people. So again, if you're kind of looking, you'll probably find it. Also, you get just so good hands-on experience within a residency. They're really going to train you to be one of the team and do all that vendor. They're going to invest into the vendor training and all those things. You're really going to get your hands dirty, and you're going to come out knowing those things. So that's why good graduates are sought after. So I know I'm biased in this, and there's a lot of different opinions about this, but I do advocate pretty heavily for the residencies. So some further observations and realities that I can tell you about pharmacy informatics. So one of the things, especially with folks that are pretty new coming into this, you'll likely never become competent in everything. Especially if you're looking at developing your own, innovative software or solution. You're never going to become a designer, an engineer, implementer, a project manager, someone who's going to, do all the technical, deploying, training and education, selling it, contracting, maintenance, support, interfacing, and investors. When I put all those things together, it sounds a lot like a company. So one of the things I don't want to do is discourage dreams and innovation and pioneering. I just want to point out that it's a lot of work, and that in all honesty, health information technology is a team sport, or at least it's best driven by a team. So I'm fascinated by innovation. I like folks that are really motivated and excited. I even like people more that have their own ideas. It's just getting something really big and develop in the world takes a lot of work. And you're better off figuring out really intelligent people to work with. That will make you more successful much more quicker because you're not going to learn all those things and become a super expert at them all. And that's also why I go and think about that passion piece a lot. It's going to take a lot to get through it. Another kind of bigger perspective that I've gotten over the years is that, it's bigger than us from a pharmacy informatics perspective. When I did early management, I work on a team that's kind of split between reporting the pharmacy and reporting into IT. And I realized really quickly that we're one team. And after leading not much longer and looking at the multidisciplinary teams and applications, I realized, again, we're kind of all one team. But then I think it took a little bit longer to realize, and a little bit bigger perspective, that, in the bigger scheme of things, when you look at patients, we're, again, all one big team. So life is competitive, organizations are very competitive, everything's governed by money. But when it really comes to providing the best care and having, quote unquote, the best system, we really just are on the same team. And we should all be just helping each other as much as possible because these are all of our patients and everyone really deserves the best. So more we can work together, the better. And I kind of end on the last point here that, and not to really discourage a lot of folks, but healthcare is just a very challenging environment. It takes a lot of work to get anything done. Even very simple changes can take a lot of coordination and planning. And it takes having thick skin and dealing with some hard conversations, dealing with setbacks and limitations, but we still want to move the needle forward. There's a lot of change. We push a lot of change on end users and providers and even patients. But even ourselves in this field have to change a lot and adapt to new ways of thinking and doing things differently, constantly. And then healthcare, well, takes a lot of care. And that's a very important piece of it. And that's something that I think is one of the principles, the foundations of coming into this job. I think once you make that connection and how you can help people's lives through technology and databases and interoperability, I think once you see that vision, you get kind of hooked on it. You get the informatics bug. So in the end, good luck. Hopefully this presentation helped you, come to some conclusions. Feel free to contact me. I am pretty open to answering pretty much anyone. I have my LinkedIn information and email. So take care and we'll talk again.